Welcome everybody to Workplace Stories, the People Experience Hub podcast. I'm delighted today to be talking to our very own Naomi Tipton, employee number one and head of sales and partnerships. Today's podcast is called Career, Motherhood and the Moments That Matter, a conversation with Naomi Tipton. And this is a lovely, heartfelt conversation where we'll be talking about Naomi's journey into her career, her experience of becoming a new parent, and what that meant for her, the complexities, how she was supported, and where she felt she could have been supported better, and some advice that she is giving for new parents everywhere. Please, please, please enjoy this episode. Welcome to Workplace Stories, the People Experience Hub podcast, and today I'm delighted to be joined by our very own Naomi Tipton. Naomi, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
It's a delight. In this episode, we are going to be exploring your journey. This is your workplace story, career, motherhood, and the moments that matter, a conversation with Naomi Tipton. So I guess to begin with, we always ask our guests the same thing, which is about their career journey, how they got to where they are today. You were our first ever employee and you are head of sales and partnerships. Tell me a little bit about your journey to where you are today.
I think I fell into sales a little bit by accident. I think that's a lot of people's journey into sales. Um, I originally started out in an events background, quickly discovered that I really didn't like it, for various reasons. But what I really did like was talking to people. And I kind of started to think about what direction I wanted to go in terms of a career as such. And yeah, I fell into it by accident. I happened to apply for a sales job just because I knew that I would have a role that would allow me to talk to people more. Um, and yeah, it was just pure accident, happy coincidence.
I guess there's a bit about that people stuff. You've got to love people to be in sales, connect the dots, solve problems, fundraising, very similar, I guess, which is
Yeah,
helping ultimately reach a goal for a charity, an individual, or an organization by talking to people and explaining what you're trying to achieve.
yeah, and that was the thing when when I was in events, you're right, it was for fundraising, it was for charities. I liked the idea of doing something for a greater good. Um, which again, I think is one of the things that appealed to me about working at the People Experience Hub. Always people who know me know that I'm not exactly a wallflower. If I've got a strong opinion about something, I will say it. Um, and from going to working into my sales job to seeing the opportunity with PX Hub come up, I think that's what attracted me to apply is that actually I can do something for a good purpose, do some good, and be in sales all at the same time.
Amazing. We've been very grateful, obviously. And you've been my wingman, inappropriate wing person,
Mhm.
wing lady for 6 years now.
Mm.
Um, I guess, what do you love most about your role today and what keeps you motivated?
That's a hard question. Not hard as in because I'm struggling to find something, like because there's so much. Um, I think what I love about my role now, I've always loved it, but done a huge amount of development in terms of, career progression since I started. Um, and obviously now I'm building up my own team. And I think what I love the most is that I now approach things from a very strategic point of view compared to a transactional, trying to make a sale point of view. I think about the whole umbrella of sales now, from the very, very beginning right through to the very, very end. Um, and I think what keeps me motivated is seeing us win and seeing us make real change. So I love it when we get a new client on board. I get excited about what we can do with them. But then I think keeping me motivated over time is because we're such a close-knit team, because We talk across departments, and I get the feedback from our client team of the work that we are doing. Just knowing that we're doing some good in the world and making a difference and adding value, I think is really motivated. It keeps you wanting to go out there and do it for more people.
Amazing. I love that so much. But let's jump into what we're actually here to talk about, which is becoming a parent, so becoming a mum and navigating change. So, 2 years ago, you became a mum and gave birth to your beautiful little boy. Can you share a bit about that transition and how that maybe changed your perspective on work and life?
Yeah, huge transition, huge. And I think it was a transition that I was very well prepared for. I think I've been very open around my fertility journey and the fertility problems that I had. Um, so having to, take different medications, lots of different appointments, I was ready to become a parent. It was something I wanted more than anything in the world. But even so, even as someone who was so prepared, that transition was huge. And it does, it sounds really cliche, but it does change you as a person. It does change your perspective of work, life, things that previously felt important don't feel as important, and vice versa. So it does really shake up your whole being, your whole view on everything.
Makes you, and I guess for our audience, I'm not a mum, but I'm a dad. And it's a different journey in its own nature, but you do look at the world differently. You see the risks in the world, you see the potential hurt and the harms in the world, and you've got something precious, someone precious to protect from all of that. So you do start, I think you start looking at the world through a lens which is safety, security, vulnerability.
Yeah, for sure. For us, we even changed where we're living. We're living down south, moved back home closer to my family because we're just looking at it around, safety, schools. What does our day-to-day life look like? How do I protect this tiny little person that I've created and has to go out and navigate this world that changes? And I think for me, you're right. You almost get like a whole new fear because you're not just having to look after yourself. The world becomes quite a scary place, I think, just especially just after you've had a child.
And it's okay, I remember the day, and I don't think I'll ever forget it, the day you told me that you were pregnant and we were sat in Clark and Dean in Toaster and you wanted to go for breakfast. We went for breakfast and you sat and you said, I've got something to tell you, Nick. And I was like, are you about to quit your job? And you said, I'm pregnant. And I cried like a baby. And then you cried. And Clark and Dean came over asking us if we wanted coffee and some hash browns. Um, and through the tears, we ordered a lovely breakfast. Um, but that's like you'd been on so much of a journey, and now you're into that next phase of the journey. What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced in balancing your career, new motherhood, being pregnant, becoming a new mother? What was I think the biggest what are the biggest challenges that you faced?
Again, hard question. I mean, I think first of all, I think what isn't necessarily spoken about so much and something that I struggled with was the being pregnant at work. Um, had a hugely difficult pregnancy in terms of, how sick I was, how tired it made me feel. And it varies for everyone. Some people take to it like a duck to water. I hated it. I hated being pregnant because of how ill I was. Um, so first of all, that was a huge challenge because I'm really career motivated. I was well underway to building a career and being successful. Um, and whilst I knew that my body was working towards, a success of another kind in, growing bones and whatever else it was doing at the time, it was a challenge feeling the way I felt. And I think we've spoken about it before, and I certainly don't mind sharing it. Is we used to have the bean bag in the old office, the absolutely
Hmm.
ginormous one. And there are times I would just take myself off and I'd have a little cat nap in there because it was so exhausting. Um, and then obviously you come across the challenges of when the little person arrives. I think I took what we're seen by a lot of people as quite a short maternity leave, 6 months, and took 6 months and I came back. Um, and just your whole life has changed, and even very basic things like the way you eat, the way you sleep, the way you structure your day, all those fundamental things change, and you feel like you come back to work and you're sleep deprived, and your body feels different, your mind feels different. Like we said, like you've introduced new fears into your world, and it's almost like you feel like you have to come back and be the person that you were before, and that person doesn't exist.
You're different. You're a different person, and babies don't get. I know we're not 9 to 5, but babies don't get Monday to Friday 9 to 5 as a concept. They've not been indoctrinated into the wonderful world of work and the structures of work. They are who they are when they are. Feed, sleep, need changing, not happy, ill. It must be incredibly difficult to come back in and as the main breadwinner in the family as well, the responsibility must hit hard.
Yeah, and I think that was not a unique situation for me because I'm not the only person in this situation, but it's certainly not what's considered the norm. The woman returning back to work and the male staying home as that stay-at-home parent. It's not traditional in terms of its setup. And for me, it felt really strange being that one to go back to work. Being a stay-at-home mum was never on my agenda. I love being a mum, but I also love being me, my career, and there are some situations where that's frowned upon maybe, or people, don't understand it because it's not traditional or maternal or however you want to say it. So I think, that was another challenge is that whole perception of, what do people think about me as a mother? Do people think differently of me now at work as a mother? And you second guess all of these core things about who you are as a person.
And the world's nuanced, right? So, you know, being a parent isn't what defines you. Being a mother or being a father or, no different to being an uncle or grandfather. This isn't the thing that defines you. It's part of you. It's part of where you are, but it's such a huge impact. I guess there must have been moments when you felt really supported. And I hope, like in our company, that you did, and within your own family group, in society, you felt supported. But there must have also been times that you felt that that support could have been better, or could have been different, or people could have got stuff quicker. Like, are there anything that you can think, both on the positive and the negative, that you would call out now as part of that story?
I mean, I definitely had a more positive experience than a lot of people I know. I was incredibly lucky to work where I work. And I think because also I'm not shy with my thoughts and opinions, um, whereas other people are maybe a little bit more reserved. So I think I had quite a positive experience because I think if I saw something I didn't like or if something wasn't working, I would call it out early. But also on the other end of that, PX Hub as a business were quite receptive to hearing that, and would listen to me. Um, I like I said, I was only off work for what was considered a short amount of time, and I felt like the whole business had changed. The world had moved on without me, um, and I found that transition difficult, and I didn't have the longest period of time off. I did all my kit days. I was coming in once a month, once every 6 weeks, and I think I felt supported in terms of I didn't come back and feel so disjointed from the business. I knew what had been going on. obviously, yes, the world had moved on without me, and it felt different, but not in terms of, information, relationships, that kind of thing, because they were all still very much there. Um, I was very much encouraged to talk about how I was feeling, just about my child in general. People were generally quite interested and wanted to know. Um, but I think for me, I think where maybe I felt not unsupported, I feel like that's a really strong word. I think mainly the thing that I struggled with is people need to understand that your body's just done this incredible thing, but also it throws all of your hormones out of whack. It takes I think, I mean, don't quote me on this, but I think, it can take a good year for those hormones to settle down. So, the way that I perhaps responded to stress or frustration, or especially being sleep deprived, I think there were definitely things that I could have done better there. But I think, that the lack of resources around, you know, how do you come back to work as a different person to when you left?
I think I hear a lot of what you're saying there, and I mean the interesting thing is I think interesting you're being very kind on here as well. And I think there's a warts and all conversation to be had here, which is I remember sitting down in our office at the time and you saying to me, I've just read our maternity policy, Nick, it's shit. And
I think that
and
was a
I
direct quote, actually.
yeah. Um and I took a look at it and I'm a big fan of experience by design, the human experience at work by design. You think about things. And we tried to do more than a basic, we tried to do more than statutory, but when we looked at it, it was written through the lens, not necessarily of the experience of a mother. We were not looking through the lens of an experience of um, a new parent. It was looked at through the lens of what's the best that's out there, what's the minimum that's out there from a real point of view, what do we need to do and what can we do that's a little bit more than that, not really thinking about actually there's more to it than that. It's life is more complicated than maternity pay, time off, when a mat B1 goes in, that's just part of it. And I think the other stuff you talked about, your kit days, and I'll probably just call that out a little bit because I don't know that we did the best job for you on that. Because like the kit days, we focused, I think, on your social, on making sure you felt connected with the people in the business, anyone new that had joined, got to know you a bit. We got to meet your baby and come on in, your family came into the office, and that was all very lovely. But we were a startup and we were in a stage where our systems were developing, our processes were developing, our procedures were developing, our teams were developing so quick over the time that you were away. I think the thing that we could have got better for you would be a better re-onboarding experience, a slower re-onboarding experience with gap analysis, the difference between then and today, relearning parts of the role. I demo our product and our product has massively changed. I remember it's one of the bits of feedback you gave to me was you haven't taken me through some of this stuff. I got surprised in a demo when I went to click here and it wasn't there anymore.
Mm.
And I think, like I said, I think you're being very kind and, I'm always grateful for that kindness. But I think, when I look back at stuff, I think I'm so pleased that we did support you in the way we supported you. I'm so pleased that you felt that support. But we could definitely learn and do more because that in the moment feedback that you did get, you are very honest, right? You are very honest and you will let me know when things are not quite right. And you did. So
Yeah,
it's,
I don't mince my words. And, I don't think I'm being kind as such. There were definitely things that could have been better. I remember when I first came back, there's travel involved in the work that we do. I remember, we went down to South Wales. We were doing a big pitch to a big company. It was a stay away. Um, and I remember having a wobble with that because I was like, oh, I'm staying away from my son. And, it's the first time I'm staying away for work. And, I've done it many times since, but it was that first. And I think you are right in saying that socially I felt very supported. And I think the assumption was because I still had quite regular contact and people saw me, that when I came back, I knew all of the change that had happened within the business. And it was a very pivotal time for the product. And it did come back. I felt like I'd come back and I was relearning it from scratch. And I do remember us going away and doing this big pitch, and I just remember feeling like a fish out of water. And I thought, like, what is wrong with me? I could used to be able to do this with my eyes shut. I knew this product inside out. Like, why am I finding it so difficult? And I remember like I really beat myself up about that. I really got in my own head about it, and I was, thinking like, oh, these people that I'm pitching to must just think I'm a rookie. They wouldn't think that I've been here as long as I've been here, that I've seen this product literally be built from nothing. And I remember getting in my own head about it. But then also on the flip side, I think whilst I could have been better supported in terms of business change, I think I think I was quite honest with you as well when I was having those wobbles and I was really struggling with like the
Mm.
technical side of my job. And I remember you saying to me like, I don't think I'm the best person to support you on this. And that's where you directed me towards mentor mums, which I'd never heard of before. And I always try and call this out when I'm having a conversation around returning back to work. And I've even recommended it to friends of mine, which is for people that don't know, Mentor Mums is a service where it's other working mums, and they become your mentor, and you meet once a month on Zoom or face to face if you're close enough, and you just talk about those challenges, the baby brain, the small nuances that only another working mum is going to understand. Mum guilt was a huge topic that I discussed with my mentor. You know, I felt guilty for still wanting to work. I felt guilty for still wanting to dedicate time to my career. I felt guilty for those times I had to be away for work. Um, and I had to reframe all that and work through that. And I think you're absolutely right in saying I don't think I'm the right person to support you, but there is the right support out there, and you were right. Like I absolutely loved my mentor, and I think organizations like that, they are a charity. It was really important. It actually really helped me get through that tough time.
I remember it really well, and I remember sitting there myself going, I have lived an experienced life in HR and people teams, and I've supported many people thinking about the processes of parental leave and how to support people, always within a framework of a large organization, always within a Tesco or a Carlsberg or someone like that, where you suddenly realize that you have so much support around you and then around you and your team and then around you and your people that you don't you may be great at people stuff. You don't need to know specifics because someone
Mm.
else will catch that. Someone else is the person. And I remember sitting there Googling and asking people and phoning people up who had been new mums and saying, "What did you do? What did you do?" And then I can't remember who said it. It was either Google or someone said to me, "Have you seen Mentor Mums?" Took a look at that, and I said, "This feels like Naomi. This feels very Naomi." Because you were doing the mental health walking stuff, you set up your own mental health walks, it felt very aligned to your values. And I kind of went, this feels like the thing we'll do what we have to do to make that work for you. And it's I think there's a thing there for thinking about moments that matter about adapting when you get given that feedback.
Yeah.
And it's almost never make the same mistake twice. you know show everybody that you're better, you're learning. And this sounds harsh, it does sound harsh, it sounds like, you know be better, but it is, be better can be incremental, like 1 degree better, 0.1% better. It's that move forward, be better, take that feedback. um, I mean, what advice would you give to other employers who want to better support new parents in their teams? And I guess maybe focus on less on those Carlsbergs and Tesco and anyone who's listening from a larger organization. I'm hoping you'll take something away from this, but let's start, maybe think about some of those smaller organizations where that natural support network isn't in place. What advice would you give those employers?
I think, I'm huge. believer that everybody's experience is different, right? And there will be similarities. But my advice would be have the conversations and have the conversations early. And also ask somebody what they want. Ask somebody what they want. Sometimes they won't know what they want, and sometimes they will. But I think it's about open, honest dialogue, having those conversations early, um, and also understanding that people's wants and needs will change. Like I certainly thought I knew what I wanted coming back to work, and actually, in theory, I needed something completely different. So again, I think for me, it's around that safe space. Like if you are not that right person, it's that person to talk to, recognize recognize that, but also signpost people. I think that was the most effective thing you did for me, which was I'm now going to signpost you to something that is appropriate and applicable to what you're feeling, the situation you're in. So yeah, open and honest conversation and arm yourself with as many resources as you can, especially for a small employer. Because when we were in that, startup scale up phase, we were so busy. We were unbelievably busy. And it's easy for weeks to go by, and then that week turns into a month, and oh yeah, we know we still need to sit down and talk about that, and I haven't forgotten, and sometimes the easiest thing to do is just arm yourself with all the resources in the
Mm.
world and pass that knowledge on.
And there are so many great organizations out there. And also, I guess the message to the larger organizations is, and I've seen this in real terms, where somebody says, why have we got a women in leadership group? Why have we got a LGBTQ plus group? Why have we got a new parents group, a new mothers group? Why have we got all of these micro communities within our macro organization when we have such amazing policies and such amazing procedures and training for our people? We give benefits. And the answer is so many people will be going through something for the first time for them. And what they want to hear from is somebody who's done it. I'm doing it. I'm about to do it. I've done it recently. And to hear their stories, to hear that this is normal.
Mhm.
What you are feeling feels odd to you, but to every other person who has gone through what you're going through, this is their journey too. And now we can talk about it because it's not unusual. And what do we need to do to make our employer think differently? Those communities are everything. And if you don't have a community because of size of the organization, outsource it, outsource the community, but don't make the emotional labor and the physical labor the individual's problem
Yeah,
because they got enough
yeah.
going on, right?
I think you've hit the nail on the head. There is enough emotional and physical labor happening in that person's life to, and you almost don't see yourself as a priority either to I must prioritize going and finding support for me. You don't think about it like that. Um, so like I said, passing on that beacon of knowledge and saying, you know, here are some resources, and actually I think what I think is best for you would, like you did with me, I think it would be mentor mums. And I think the other thing is it was so considered, like you said, it matched my style, it met my values, and sometimes you won't always have like the capacity to think about it in such detail, but I definitely think a considered, thoughtful approach where it can be given also makes a huge difference.
Yeah, no, that really does make sense. And I mean, I'm interested in a few things, lots of different things. I'm interested in so many things. Has it changed the way that you lead your team, becoming a mum?
Um, yes and no. I think, I mean, you've described me as this before, but I'm very much a mama bear anyway. Um, I do very much take people under my wing and then fiercely protect them from anyone else and try and take on burdens where I can. Um, I think it's changed my leadership style in the way I view success. For me, success very much now is around helping someone develop, helping them develop their skills, helping them be able to do what I can do so well. And I think a part of that has come from parenting a small person that's learning everything for the first time, and the joy that I get seeing Elio learn things and fitting things into place and figuring things out. I think I've very much brought that into work. I think I've always enjoyed like managing people or having a team as such. I've always had that team element, but actually, I think I dedicate a lot more time now to teaching, sharing knowledge, and then I get the satisfaction when those skills, those puzzle pieces fall into place.
It's and it does make, and I see it with you that you've always been the nurturing individual, and you kind of have more of that. More, I think it's just more of that same is kind of probably the only way I could describe it.
Mm.
Looking in from the outside almost. And you've always been a strong advocate for just open conversations and the stuff we've talked about now around just you've got to have open conversations, but like, how important do you think it is for workplaces to create those spaces for vulnerability? Not necessarily just the conversation and understanding, but vulnerability. Because with vulnerability comes fear, comes tears, comes laughter, that exhaustion, that collapsing, that napping in the office. How do you think organizations can, how important is it rather for organizations to do it? Not how can they do it?
I think it's really important. And I think it's one of those things where it has to come from every person in the business. It can't just be, sometimes we're vulnerable, sometimes we're not, or this person's vulnerable, this person isn't. And again, I think it's something that I bring into my leadership style now is I have no fear about having an honest conversation. I have no fear about sharing a personal experience, something that I found difficult, something that upset me, something that made me happy, something I took joy from. And I say it all the time, people buy from people, but also people are managed by people. Businesses are made of people, and every person has a vulnerability, something to share, something to learn. So I think it's hugely important. I think if you weave that into your culture, your way of being as a business, then I think you're only ever going to reap the benefits of that.
So true. So true. And I think we are formed by our earliest experience of anything leadership, management. And I was lucky enough to work in my time for so many great leaders at Tesco at my formative career that I learned servant leadership as my leadership style. And, growing up in retail, it's about, putting everything on pause to delight the customer. It's nothing's more important than that customer experience, than that colleague experience. Your job isn't to do your core job. Your job is to remove hurdles from everyone else, barriers from everyone else. I'm going to ask you a real quick question now, which is what's more important, sales targets or family?
Family,
Every time. Every
every
time,
time.
family first.
Yeah,
Yeah. What's more important, perceived business success or family?
family.
If you can't put family first, I don't know that you can have business success. You can have the most successful business in the world, but if you're not putting families and people first, then your success is purely a measure of money or a measure of a KPI. It's not about people.
And, perceived business success and sales targets aren't going to be sat there with you when you're 70 odd, you know, family is.
Yeah. If you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice before becoming a parent, what would it be?
Just be easy on yourself. You don't have to do it all of the time. You don't have to be good at everything all of the time. And I think I would tell myself to be more accepting of bumps in the road and just knowing they're inevitable and it can't be smooth sailing all the time. Things going well at work. Chances are, your kid will start teething, go for a sleep regression. your kid's not going for a sleep regression or teething something or go tits up at work. It's just life. And sometimes, you're a big you're a big advocate of saying to me, no, slow down to speed up, get the foundations in place. And once the foundations are in place, you can build on top of that. And I think um I put too much pressure on myself to still be able to do everything that I could do before. And it took me a long time to accept that there were just some things that I perceived as important that just weren't important. Like they could just fall away and it would be fine. Everything else would still be standard.
And we do learn this stuff from work, and I think this is workplace stories. And I think that the what a new parent, maybe you become a parent once, maybe twice, maybe three times, maybe more, but this isn't something that anyone is a particular specialist at or an expert at. You do it, you find your way through it, but it is those micro moments that are important outside of work,
Mm.
putting your child to bed, reading a story, hearing the first words, or seeing the first steps. And I always used to say this. I was lucky enough to work for lately in Tesco, when I was all over the place, doing negotiations and stuff. I worked for a man called Roger Roberts, who until recently is our chairman. And I never missed a parents' evening. I never missed a school play. I never missed the first day of school or the last day of school. I never missed anything that was important, irrelevant of where I was. If I was out in Belfast, I would fly back on Wednesday lunchtime and fly back on Thursday morning. And that was a gift that I thought was well given to me. And I realized that that was a gift I should expect. That isn't a gift. It's just actually, this is normal. This is what I should have. But to be
Mm.
grateful for it suggests that gratitude is human, but also do we expect less than that?
And I think I mean, obviously you're coming from your perspective of being a father. I think women, or certainly women in my experience and myself, expect even less. I think sometimes you're almost grateful that you've got a job to go back to in the same role that you had before. Um, you know, childcare is something I will never stop talking about. I'm in a fortunate position that m my other half is, full-time stay-at-home daddy daycare. He loves it. I still get to go to work. It works really well for us. But that is, again, it's not the norm. It's not something you come across very often. Um, and another piece of advice I would give to employers is still make the workplace accessible. I'll never forget sitting there sleep deprived, trying to figure out what tax-free childcare was, childcare vouchers, this, that, and how it all works, and how even just support with the transactional things like childcare, put it in layman's terms, telling people what they've got access to, because even things like that make the workplace so inaccessible for a working mum, and I don't know whether it's because I am a working mum, therefore I hear more stories from other working mums because they're naturally in my network. But actually, I feel like my experience has been a very fortunate one because I didn't feel like I had to make many career sacrifices, if any career sacrifices. But that is not the typical normal experience.
There's a lot to take in and unpack for society there, for sure. And I think you're absolutely right. It's it definitely feels there is a hugely gendered difference between parental attitudes from employers, and there's a lot to do. We don't have another 6 hours, but I think feel like
I
we could go
could talk
on.
about it for that long, but
But we could. It's such an important topic, and I guess if I think about, I mean, obviously we're an employee voice company.
mm,
Um, like how can organizations make sure that parents, and let's focus on mothers, let's focus on mums. How can organizations make sure that especially new mums feel heard, valued, and included? You've talked about a lot of stuff, but What can organizations do now, do you think, in terms of employee voice and employee listening?
Again, I think it's asking someone what they want and doing everything in your power to make that a reality. There are certain things or certain industries where it's not that straightforward, but things things like asking someone what they want. Do they want to work slightly different hours? Does 8 till 4 make more sense to for them than 9 till 5? Does 4 longer days make more sense than 5 shorter days? Um, even things like job shares, and like I said, making information available around things like childcare, what's available to you. Again, arming yourself with all those resources and putting them in layman's terms as well, because they're not always the easiest to understand and it's complex and you know, and I think just being realistic about the fact that we we are human beings. There has to be some flexibility. There has to be a bit of give somewhere,
Mhm.
whether it's in working hours, whether it's in, job shares, later starts, early finishes. That's just life.
It just makes so much sense. And we are now coming to the end. I think when we put this podcast out, we'll share the links to Mentor Mums. It's a timely reminder that they are a charity, so we will make a donation to Mentor Mums as well. So we will put that out there. And I will match the company's donation myself as well because I saw the work they did, and I saw that you also became a mentor mum through that process for a period of time. And I think that's something that is good in the world. So we should make sure we're backing that up. So a good, timely reminder. And probably for me that, I am so grateful for you in our business. And it was a privilege to provide any support that we gave you because to be on the journey with us from day one and to come all the way through, it's something that I think organizations should think about. I do think they should think about that. It has been a privilege. I am so grateful that you are with us today and that you've been with us for this journey. And we will continue to try and keep making it better as we go along. So thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. If anyone wants to connect with you, where's the best place? Do you live in LinkedIn? Is it somewhere else?
LinkedIn, yeah.
Amazing.
Posting there quite a lot about everything we've spoken about today.
Amazing stuff. So thank you so much. And that's it. That was the end. Thank you so much.
No, thanks for having me. It's been great.